My biggest problem is this. The Constitution sets up a sunset clause on the issue of the equalization. It was only supposed to be 10 years, but our counties have not enjoyed any resources from the equalization fund. We have kept this money. So the question is, as I support this bill, will all the money be sent that has been kept aside? Is that money there in the consolidated fund, or it's not there? Those people who build those hospitals and were never paid, will they be paid? Will those hospitals that were built in some counties, those roads which were paved or maybe graded, so that these counties or villages who are still living in the old ages can be able to slowly catch up with the rest of Kenya? Are those roads still, are they still functional, or are they dilapidated? Mr. Speaker, sir, I think as a country, we need to be asking ourselves and reminding ourselves the concept of a fiduciary responsibility. I would dare say, Mr. Speaker, that we have not been responsible as legislators, as the other arm of government, the executive, because at least if we were and we cared about our counties catching up with other counties, 2023 should not be the first time when we are discussing the issue of equalization fund. And if we are to be remorseful, I hope that Treasury will be able to release the entire amount set aside to our counties. I do hope also that those contracts, or which will be built using the money from the equalization fund, will be given to youth, women from those villages. We don't want a situation whereby a small cabal or a cartel ends up getting all the contracts. Yet, the whole concept of setting aside a small percentage of all the revenue collected should be supporting those counties which are behind. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, since I do not want to belabor the point, I think my point was very clear from the onset. This Senate failed, in my view, in defending devolution by agreeing for the very first time with the national government in terms of the shareable revenue. And we are going to pay hard for it. I do hope that now all of us will be able to support this and also follow through to make sure that whatever amount of money is sent to Narok. And I think the process which has been set up now is a point of order. I'm happy to wait.
Yes, Senator Cherargei.
Mr. Speaker, I raise under Standing Order number 105 on responsibility of fact. What Senator Oledama is insinuating is that the Senate did participate in cutting money that is meant to be sent to counties. Mr. Speaker, Senator Oledama and I sat in this House, and in the last financial year, counties got 370 billion. We have increased by 15 billion to 385 billion. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a house of record, tradition, and respect. I would urge my colleague, Mr. Speaker, through you, to separate what he says in public and in newspapers and what he is saying on the floor of the House. Because we cannot participate. Mr. Speaker, I remember, even in your ruling on the Meru case, when I tried to contest on the report that were tabled in this House, I was disagreeing with it. Mr. Speaker, I was thrown outside the chamber. So is Senator Oledama in order to allege that the Senate is killing, dismembering, committing macabre against devolution, Mr. Speaker? Yet we have added 15 billion. In fact, what he should be saying, Mr. Speaker, is that the Senate added 15 billion to 385 billion, although they wanted 407 billion, Mr. Speaker. So this incitement of Senate by the likes of Senator Oledama, by the public, is uncalled for, Mr. Speaker. And he knows very well that when in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, under Article 202, the country is in a deep mess because of public debt. And the first charge when we collect revenue is the high of 10 trillion, Mr. Speaker. And you are aware Senator Oledama voted, Mr. Speaker, and it is on the record, in the raising of public debt ceiling. So is it in order for him to mourn and wail more than the bereaved, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Rekina, you have heard the issues raised on your statement.
Mr. Speaker, facts are very stubborn. In the history of the Senate, this Senate, for the very first time, failed devolution. Mr. Speaker, this Senate, for the very first time, went against its own committee. Mr. Speaker, the committee, which is chaired by the distinguished senator from Mandera, is a committee of this House. The committee proposed that we, in this committee, in this parliament, agree with the Commission of Revenue Allocation by sending money, 407 billion shillings, to counties. If the distinguished senator from Nandi would like me to substantiate my facts, I'll be more than happy, Mr. Speaker. And the first thing I'll table here are two things. One, I'll table the report of the Committee of Finance, chaired by the very able party leader, EGH, you know, chairman, Captain Ali Roba, who recommended that we send 407 billion. Mr. Speaker, this is something I'm willing to be able to defend. And we will cry for a very long time, Mr. Speaker. It is absolutely ludicrous for any one of us to purport to say that this Senate has promoted devolution by agreeing with the national government. Our task is very simple, Mr. Speaker. Our task is to defend devolution. In fact, the very Division of Revenue bill that my brother is now inviting me to comment on says that, Article 218 says that when we deviate from the recommendation of the Commission of Revenue Allocation, we must give substantive reasons. The reasons which were given in the Division of Revenue bill, the memoranda, to try and justify the deviation from the Commission of Revenue, when the National Assembly suggested that, proposed that we send 385, was that money was set aside to pay the Hustler Fund. So it begs the question, why are we here? Are we here to defend national government, or are we here to defend the county government? Mr. Speaker, you know, facts are very stubborn. And let me tell you, we will cry, and next time, when the distinguished senator, I'm responding to his point of order.
Just a minute, Senator Oledama. What is it again, Senator Cherargei?
You know, Mr. Speaker,
Mr.
Speaker, on a point of order, Mr. Speaker, do not be intimidated.
Also to contribute
Mr. Speaker,
to the motion.
Mr. Speaker, understanding order 183, 105, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted him to clarify, because, Mr. Speaker, every committee makes a report. The Senate, you cannot behave as if the Senate must agree with the committee report. Mr. Speaker, there are instances when investigated senators, Senator Oledama, sat in the committee of investigating on what we call medical equipment supplies. And in that report where he was a member, he said this was a criminal enterprise. But he came and denied the same report, Mr. Speaker. So the House has power either to agree or disagree with any committee, Mr. Speaker. And therefore the statement and accuracy of facts was to stop misleading the House and the public. Because, Mr. Speaker, the last financial year was 370 billion. We have increased by 15 billion, shareable revenue to 385 billion, Mr. Speaker. Under Article 202, all the way to 205, Mr. Speaker, it is not only shareable revenue, Mr. Speaker. Can I finish, Mr. Speaker? So that he didn't listen properly. You know, Mr. Speaker, maybe he has been busy milking cows. Mr. Speaker, under Article 202 and 205, the money that goes to counties, Mr. Speaker, is one, shareable revenue, conditional grants, and other grants that are being given by national government, Mr. Speaker. So to sit in the House and mislead that the money that was meant to the counties were being taken to Hustler Fund is a fallacy, a misnomer, Mr. Speaker, and you should not allow him to go through that direction, Mr. Speaker. Is he in order to allege that any report prepared by its committee of the Senate should be agreed with, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Oledama Olekina, can you kindly conclude?
Mr. Speaker, you know,
And honorable
Mr.
senators, honorable senators, the word shame is not parliamentary. You are colleagues, honorable
Mr.
Sifuna.
Speaker.
The word is shame is unparliamentary, absolutely. Because this house, you either vote to defeat a bill, you either vote nay or yes. And that is done. So, you know, the one shame to me as your chair this afternoon is conclude and
Mr.
finish.
Speaker, you know, it baffles me when a senator, someone who is supposed to read any bill that he contributes to, stands on the floor of the House and says that I'm misleading the public, that the reason why we deviated was not because of the Hustler Fund. Mr. Speaker, I want to invite the distinguished senator from Nandi to go out and seek for a copy of the Division of Revenue Bill and read the memorandum. There are reasons which were given. This is a gentleman who is an advocate of the High Court. I would believe that an advocate of the High Court, you know, or allegedly, you know, Mr. Speaker, would pay attentive to details and read everything. Mr. Speaker, you know, really,
Senator Kenya, what is
the points of
your point of
the
honor?
points of